Hey everyone, it's Mario from WATL, and today we're going to talk about how to throw a big axe. Big axe is no different than hatchet. The main difference is longer handle, slightly heavier head. Now, for those who have the strength, you'll be able to throw it like you would a hatchet. And a lot of elite throwers, which you've probably seen on ESPN, are actually throwing it like a hatchet. They've lightened it down enough so it is at the minimum requirement of 2.25 pounds, but it's light enough where they can throw it, but it's heavy enough where it's still a big axe. Now, before we even throw a big axe, we're simply just going to talk about distance. And distance is the thing that determines how an axe will rotate. And what I mean by that is we will never be able to have this axe stick at the 12-foot mark. The 12-foot mark is really meant for hatchets. And that distance for hatchets is really anywhere from a 15-inch handle to a 17-inch handle, depending on how you throw it. Now, even if I try over-rotating it, it's very difficult to get accurate and throw it from 12 feet. The WATL Big Axe rule is there's two lines. There's the 17-foot line where you start from and the 15-foot line that you cannot cross. Some throwers, you're allowed to have 1 foot over the 17-foot mark. What some throwers like to do is they like to start with their foot right over. Other throwers like to have the momentum, and they use the momentum in order to propel that axe forward. It's all preference, and I encourage you to try both. Whether it's a step throw, and you get the momentum from the body and from the movement, or whether it is a stationary throw, whether it's two-handed or one-handed, and you release. So those are the distances. And before I jump into anything else, I just wanted to talk about the distances between the two. In reality, you will never really be throwing from the 15-foot mark. It's very, very hard for someone to rotate it fully at the 15-foot mark. What I find is the majority of the throwers are actually releasing the axe anywhere in between 16 to 17 or 17 and a half feet. Some throwers even just won't get to that point and they actually release it at the 18-foot mark. But when you're right at the 15-foot mark, it's going to be very difficult for you to get that full and proper rotation. You're going to be too close. And so what will likely happen is because the axe isn't fully rotating, when you release it and it goes to spin, it doesn't have enough distance, and so it'll hit handle first and it'll bounce back, or it'll drop, or it'll crack your handle, or it'll hit like this, handle first, then blade, and then it'll drop. If you're landing handle first, all that means is take a step back. So again, it's very simple to fix big axe or even any hatchet throw. A quick and simple fix is if you land handle first, that means the axe needs more space in order to rotate, take a step back. WATL Big Axe handle specs are, this one out of the box I believe is 26 or 27 inches length. So it comes out of stock this way. Now, if you want to get closer, if you want the axe to rotate faster and you don't want to take that step back, it's very simple. You can just trim down the handle length and get it to that length where you're closer. Now, what I encourage you to do if you do it, make sure you're taking off half an inch and no more than half an inch. And as you start getting closer, maybe do half an inch, and then start getting into quarter inches because those quarter inches matter. And before you start taking any more off, do at least several dozen throws because that is when you will know you have the right length. Because if you cut too much off, you won't be able to add that back and you're going to be stuck. Now, there's a lot of modifications that people do to the big axes in order for them to get some sort of an advantage. Part of what they do is they might actually shave this down and make this handle, which is hickory wood, as light as possible, as thin as possible. Even the grip, it's a lot thicker than a standard hatchet. So big axe handles, by design and by definition, the eye is substantially bigger because it has to be bigger to hold that weight, and it also needs to be bigger so it's more durable. But what that means is the bottom of the handle is actually going to be thicker as well. So one of the things you can do is actually start shaving it down, and a lot of throwers do that, and they lighten the handle as much as possible, and then they shorten the handle so then they can get it to a point where they're literally throwing it like a hatchet. Now, not everyone's going to throw it that way, and I've seen a lot of the elite and top and best big axe throwers all over the world throwing it over their shoulder. like they would in a lumberjack competition, or throwing it over their head. Again, these are all things that you can try, and you can still cut the handle and you can still lighten it out. And by lightening it out, it might make it easier for then you to release. Now, the other thing that throwers do is they like to thin down the axe, and you'll see there's a bit of profiling that we've even done on this one. And so when you thin out the axe, when you make it and you make your adjustments, or you don't have to make any at all, especially when you're starting, those are some of the things that will give you the advantage to get closer to the 15-foot mark to again be a lot more accurate, because the 15-foot mark is really, again, only 3 feet further back from the hatchet. So it is much closer than throwing it from the 17. And you want to take advantage of any sort of possible advantage that you can get. Now, throwing and gripping. So again, there's two popular styles that I'm gonna go through. The first style is going to be the two-handed throw. So you would grip it, just like for those who have gone golfing, I grip it just like a golf club. Similar, where it goes in the insides of my fingers, gripping it around, and I put my wrist in, my fingers around, and then my hand wraps around it. It's all perfectly lined up straight. I bring it over the head, and I release straight in front of me. I don't have to worry about flicking, I don't have to worry about the rotation. You simply put it over your head and release. So I'll show you what that would look like in a throw. So I'm gonna start 2 feet are behind the 17-foot mark. I'm actually gonna be starting more around probably the 18-foot mark because I'm taller, and if I step too far, I'm actually gonna touch the 15-foot mark, which will be a fault. So I'm gonna make sure I don't step too far. I'm going to put it over my head. I'm going to step and then release in one fluid motion. So again, you saw my hands just release right in front of me and just completely release the axe. That was a two-handed throw. I'm not looking for accuracy. I'm not focusing on that right now. I just want to show you the release and the technique. Now, the one-handed technique is similar to a hatchet. And I don't want to hold it too far down because that weight, it's quite a bit. If you hold it higher up the handle, the weight isn't so bad and it's tolerable, and then I'll be able to throw it. The throw is going to be the same. I'm going to use my momentum to actually propel the axe forward. So again, I'm going to start at roughly about the 18-foot mark. I'm going to line up just like I would with a hatchet. I'm going to put it right kind of beside my head, step forward, and release. And you'll notice I prefer the one-handed throw. I'm a one-handed thrower myself. The reason I like that is, one, I have the strength for it, but I'm able to line it up much easier. And you'll notice that with the one-handed throw, I actually lined it up in the middle board where the two-handed one went to the side. The only thing I really have to do now is just focus on the vertical adjustment. So I aim too low, I'll slightly adjust it by 2 inches higher, and then I'll release. So those are the two most popular ways of throwing. Two-handed versus the one-handed throw. There is no right or wrong technique. It's whatever works for you. The rest are all simpler adjustments. If you're, for example, there, I actually rotated quite well. It was slightly under-rotated because it landed almost in this angle. With Big Axe, it's scary to land that way ever, and you do want to adjust the throw where you're actually landing more like this. Not only does it get you more coverage, but you don't risk dropping the axe because you hit the handle first. So the only adjustment I would make there, assuming I'm not going to change anything on this handle, there's two things I could do. I can either shorten the handle, keep the throw the exact same, or I can take a step even further back, and for someone my height, I'm 6'4", so I would start closer to the 19-foot mark. So what I'll do is I'll adjust it, I'll start further back, and then so when I step in, I'm actually going to be releasing at about almost 16 feet. It's going to be about 15 1/4. Again, I line it up just like I would a hatchet. I'm bringing it back right beside my head, and release. And that one would have been the old bullseye, but not the new one. Now, you'll notice with that throw, I also made the adjustment of what I didn't do before, where I aim slightly higher. So I am now in that bullseye range. So the adjustments that you have to make, you have to do them based on whatever you did on that throw. So on that one, I also noticed that when I released, I was leaning a bit more, so then I had to adjust it mid-throw. And when I adjusted mid-throw, it's not perfectly down the middle. And again, this is what you have to do. You have to be a perfectionist. Unless it's perfectly right in the middle, it's a mistake. And my mistake was my balance was slightly off. And this is a game where you're constantly looking to improve, whether it's the way you're stepping forward. And in this case, I had my foot when I stepped forward, and let me take a step back so you can see my feet. Now, what I did is I stepped too close to the middle of the chest. I wasn't perfectly balanced, so if anyone were to kind of push me on my shoulder or tap me, I would tip over. So what you want to do is you want to make sure your balance is completely lined up. I should have stepped closer on the outside so it's perfectly shoulder width, and then release. And that way your chest is straight, your whole body's straight, and you're walking forward, not at an angle, and then trying to fix it. All right, so again, last and final thing I'll leave you with is something I'm not going to show you because it's going to get boring, is practice. Practice a lot. Adjust the throw. Don't be afraid of trying different things. And it could be small things that you might have to do to perfect the throw. Maybe when you step, you have to use your hip to adjust for it or to get more momentum when you do the step. Or maybe you just don't like to step at all and you like to keep it stationary. Now, I'm not going to do any more two-handed throws. I have some tears on my rotator cuff, which are very painful right now. But what I do want to leave you with is I want you to practice as much as you can because that's the only way you'll be able to perfect it. The key to axe throwing specifically, especially WATL, it's all distance. That's all it is. If you're over rotating it, that means you are way too far back and you started too far back. And so if it's landing like this, you need to step closer. And if you can't step closer, then you can start making adjustments on the axe in order to make sure that you're not over rotating. And so there's very simple things that can be done to adjust your throw for big axe. It's not an overly complex amount of adjustments that you have to make. It's either over rotating, under rotating. The aim is actually quite not that difficult. If you can do it just like you would throw it with a hatchet, great. If not, overhand actually works extremely well. That's all I have for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the basics on how to throw and how to learn how to throw a big axe, and I hope you guys give it a shot. I mean, it's a lot of fun, and I think the thing that I love about the most is the adjustments that you make to the axe in order to perfect it. If it were me, and let's say this were my axe and I'm competing at a higher level, I would start shaving off the handle. Personally, I would try to make this as small as possible, as light as possible, to make it like a hatchet, so then I can throw it much easier, and I would also thin the profile even more. So these are all personal preferences, just like how art works. This is an art form, and so whatever you want to do with the axe is completely on you. And I hope you guys enjoy it, and I hope you guys have a lot of fun too. So go out there, practice a lot, try out the Big Axe Leagues. It's one of the fastest growing components of WATL right now. There's a lot more people are getting into it because it's so different and it is very fun. Hope you guys enjoy. If you haven't already, like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, subscribe on YouTube. We'll be creating a lot more content, teaching you guys how to throw axes, big axes, and even getting tips from some of the world's top throwers. Thanks a lot, guys. Take care.